Okay, so hi, Dr. Loui. Thank you so much for coming today to talk about your work. Before we get started, could you introduce yourself and what you do?
Sure, it's great to be here. My name is Psyche Loui, and I'm Associate Professor of Creativity and Creative Practice in the Department of Music at Northeastern University. My
Okay.
lab is called the MIND Lab. MIND stands for Music, Imaging, and Neural Dynamics. We do research on the cognitive neuroscience of music and how that information can be used to help people and by designing music-based interventions for people with neurodegenerative diseases and disorders.
Okay. That's interesting. I really like how you're using music to help with neurodegenerative diseases and then looking at the intersection of music and neuroscience. Could you talk a bit more about how you're using what you're learning into practice, into medical interventions, and then any cool findings that you have had in the recent years?
So my lab has been interested in why we have music in a very abstract philosophical sense for a while. And I think part of why we're doing this is because we ourselves are musicians. So I played violin and piano since I was quite small. Recently learning mandolin. I play in orchestra and chamber music. I play in Longwood Symphony, which is a Boston area medical professionals orchestra. And then I also play bluegrass in bluegrass jam sessions around the Boston area. So it's been kind of a big part of my life. And over the years, I've seen this kind of seemingly magical power of music really light up people. And by lighting up, I really mean, firstly, that their eyes light up, right? I used to volunteer at a nursing home, a kind of assisted living in Vancouver, Canada, where I'm from. And, there are these kind of average age there was 87, right? So definitely some older adults who had pretty severe dementia, right? They might not know what year it is. They might not know who you are. They might be alive. That's always struck me as really kind of magical, kind of transformative. Um, and fast forward many years, I'm doing neuroscience in music, and we look at functional MRI scans and EEG recordings when people are listening to music, and we can see how there are major networks of the brain that are also being lit up, as in they're showing statistically significant activity when listening to music, especially music that you love, relative to, let's say, speech or non-musical sounds. That became kind of the motivation for firstly designing and working with music therapists to design music-based interventions to really target those systems that we're seeing that music is uniquely good at engaging. And then those same systems also tend to be kind of first to go in neurodegenerative diseases and disorders. So, for example, Parkinson's disease and Alzheimer's disease are both characterized by decreased metabolism of many areas, especially dopaminergic rich areas in the frontal lobe. So those areas are also engaged by music, especially music that you select to listen to yourself. So that finding became really important cornerstone for how my lab thinks about what we're doing when we're listening to music, and it also kind of fueled more philosophical discussions or more basic science kinds of inquiry about why music matters, right? About why music brings people together, right? So across different societies, people listen to music, people enjoy listening to music, people enjoy making music and celebrate the making of music. And that always seems to be hand in hand with these social situations like group bonding, mother-infant bonding, or work songs, right? So, or songs that express passion, right? So these are all ways in which music taps into this general way in which humans relate to each other, and my lab's become very interested in that as well.
Yes, thank you so much. You have a really extensive background in both neuroscience and also music. Could you talk a bit about how your background in music has helped inform the work you do at your labs or your approaches you take with neuroscience?
Well, I think music is such a fundamentally social activity.
Mhm.
Right. So I like to play, certainly like to play instruments by myself, but I really love playing with other people. And I think that kind of learning to listen, learning to work together, learning to problem solve together is something that the lab really has gotten very, very used to doing. And also just learning to work with people who have different skill sets as you, right? So in a chamber group, for example, I play violin in a quartet, right? And it's you have to learn to listen to people who have different parts from you. And I think that kind of listening and kind of quieting down to pay attention to somebody else is something that's especially important for collaborations with other scientists as well. So, for example, we do lots of interdisciplinary collaborations with music therapy,
Mhm.
um, clinicians, practitioners, and also with other neuroscientists, and also with musicians, musicologists, right? People who read historical archives for for their scholarship. So and also with composers, right? People who are really taught to put music together, put tones together in ways that maybe appeal to the reward system. So yeah, so I think that kind of interdisciplinary research has really benefited from musical experience, but also just generally, I think having a good ear, right? And the ability to design your own stimuli and then look and investigating the neural responses or psychological responses to those sounds. And I think that's really benefited from just having some of the musical tools or techniques and abilities to listen for small differences, fine-grained differences in pitch or rhythm. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. And then what does your day-to-day look like, especially since you're balancing the lab, teaching, music? So could you walk through your day-to-day in this intersection?
Yeah, there's never a single day. There may be different sets of days. There are some days that involve teaching. So I teach a couple of courses. One of my favorites is music perception and cognition, right? So introducing students to the psychology of music, including how we think about pitch, how we think about rhythm, how we think about music, why music drives emotions. Yeah, so that's one set of days. Many days are research days, right? So I meet with my lab members, I meet with PhD students, postdocs, lab manager, and all the undergraduate students in the lab, designing projects, thinking about how to test hypotheses, maybe showing students how to work with brain data, especially. Yeah, those are kind of routine day-to-day activities. We run lab meetings where we read papers together and we talk about ongoing projects. We also, I also do music playing, and so a few times a week I would be playing music in the evenings. I also spend time with my family, right? So there's a good integration between work and life. So I guess um, my family members and we make music together sometimes in the evenings. I would say the day-to-day involves some semblance of work-life integration and some meetings with students and some thinking about research projects. Of course, I try to carve out some time for writing and for thinking about major projects, and I find that to be very rewarding as well.
Mhm. And then the last question I have, after you talking about this, your journey and all the work you do, what advice do you have for those who are hoping to follow in your footsteps and to pursue this intersection?
I think it's really important to prioritize what makes you feel kind of engaged and what makes you feel like you're having fun. So I think so much of what a scientific career entails, sometimes you feel like, well, you've got to, in order to make it, you have to, show certain metrics of productivity, right? Like you have to publish, or you have to get certain scores, or you have to get certain grades. And but I feel like it's most important to feel like you're getting a balance in your life. So if you're singularly focused on getting research-based outcomes, then that does not end up being the most sustainable career solution. So I think a career is really about finding a trajectory. It's not about kind of reaching one milestone at a time. So I mean, I think part of my research. So I mean, I mentioned that I teach a course on music perception and cognition. I also teach courses on creativity and creative cognition. And one thing that's most notable from that line of research, if you look at what creative people are doing when they're in the flow state, right? Let's say like we've done some work on jazz improvisation and classical musicianship, and the main finding is that you have to be open to different kinds of expectations, and you have to be okay with different things, changes that are unexpected that happen in your horizon. And I think that is part of the process of kind of maintaining mental health. I think is mental hygiene, I guess, is playing the long game and staying creative and having fun while you're doing it.
Well, thank you so much for your advice, and thank you for talking about your experience.